Got here what looks to be a late 70s Ampeg SVT. And the owner says go through it and call with estimate. Let's flip this around and get started. I said flip it around. Of course, there's no real flipping of an SVT. They are weighty, weighty beasts. I've joked that I am old enough to know what I'm doing in an SVT, but young enough to still be able to pick one up. So I'm kind of in the sweet spot. Hope that continues. So the first thing I see is the plug. It's the old one with the phenolic there, or cardboard. It looks like it's all broken. It's a pretty crappy plug. I don't think it's original. New power cable would not go amiss. And some SVTs, this metal panel that holds the fan goes behind the rear plate. And it looks like this one originally did that, but it's been mounted on top, which is not as pretty, but it sure makes my life easier. Let me get this out of the way and disconnect the fan. 10 screws! Okay, it's got relatively recent Sovtech 6550s. I don't see any discoloration or darkening of the plates or lost vacuum. Nice layer of dust, so they've been on there a while. I can see the cardboard tubes covering the old filter can caps back there, and this one feels a little bit bulgy. We'll get to that. I want to point out that I love this style of 6550 retainers. And Ampeg has started doing that again. I guess I should say Yamaha has started doing that again on the current and most recent ones. But the ones that have the top metal plate with the springs that go down the side, especially on 6550s, those just kill tubes. The metal and the glass heat and cool at different rates, and over time the metal can actually make impressions in the glass, because these tubes get really, really hot, and any little vibration, and those springs are prone to vibration, and the whole thing just shatters. Even when that doesn't happen, they go microphonic at the drop of a hat. Anyway, let me disconnect the preamp stuff here. Try to do that as easily as can be. Sometimes these are a bit tough. That one came out all right. Now, one of the issues with these amps is that there's a ground wire going from this quick connect to the preamp stuff, and sometimes that can get messed up. I'll give that a thorough examination. Certainly a lot of dirt embedded in there. That can make these contacts really dirty. We'll come back to that. Let me pull the power chassis, which has got the bulk of the stuff, then we'll get the preamp out. I can't show all that on camera just because I'd swear too much. They'd yank my channel. And even saying that sounds dirty. I will, however, take the time to point out once again the importance of mating the screw size to the screwdriver size. This is a number 3 Phillips. This is what fits these large screws. On Ampegs and Marshalls and other amps that use those large ones, those screw heads usually get chewed up because someone goes in there with a number 2 and it doesn't fit in there. It's real sloppy and it just tears things up. You want a nice fit with no slop, and then it turns. Viola. And I'm not going to use the tool until I know that all of them are free turning. Then I'll go to a power tool to speed things up. Well, so far so good. It's been recapped partially. Not beautifully, but it might be functional enough. But it still has the original filters here and here. And this one is beginning to vent a little bit. More importantly, really, is that there's no heat discoloration on the board. Oftentimes, with these plate resistors and screen resistors in here, and even the diodes, these boards can get really toasted. And this really looks good. Let me flip it over, and take a look at the other side of this board, see if there's anything there. A lot of times, some of the original components predictably go bad on that board, but from the looks of these solder joints, some of them might have been already changed out. All right, down here at this end, got a JJ12AX7 and the two EH Electro-Harmonics 12AU7s. At least that's what they should be. I'll confirm that. Just getting these old nuts off here so I can pull this panel up. And take a 5/16 inch socket, like so. I put those in the little bowl of SVT hardware goodness. And lift this panel up. Okay, let's take a look here. Down at this end, they've already changed out for some 5 watts and some 3 watts. That's fine. Got some yuck down here. Let me show you that. Just dirt, but these yellow box caps often go bad. And these larger power resistors sometimes need a little help. And the old film caps need to be checked for leakage, just like with anything else. Though those WMFs, these are great caps. It's these yellow box caps, and sometimes the tropical fish or 3 in an Ampeg that are not your friends. And I'll do a closer inspection for heat and stuff and measure all the diodes and just generally get a bunch of yuck out of this thing to make sure that everything's clean, but I've certainly seen worse. Let me look at the preamp stuff. Alright, it's the same as the other stuff, only this time it's going to take a 1/4 inch rather than 5/16. And all the hardware associated with the preamp stuff will go in a different bowl than the hardware associated with the output and power stuff. Less likely to get things mixed up. Sometimes that one's been replaced with a screw, that one's missing, this one was loose. And I particularly loathe those tube shields that Ampeg used on these, but we'll get there. We get all this stuff out, finish it up. And yet more little screws and nuts and things to loosen up so we can see inside the preamp stuff. I could pretty much totally recap a Princeton in the time it takes to fully open and diagnose what is often wrong in a 60s or 70s SVT. They're wonderful sounding amps. Don't get me wrong, but there is a high cost of ownership. It is not a Corolla, so to speak. No schematic on this one. Some SVTs and other Ampegs are nice enough to have the schematic there. Let me flip this around and take a look. Well, there's some definite what the F going on with all the silicone. Changed out switch there. Lots and lots of hair, silicone hair or hot glue hair, whatever it is. Oh, that's nice. That makes me feel all tingly and warm inside. That could make someone else feel very tingly too. That needs to be replaced. And that's just a way to bridge old wires and new wires. That's bad. You are a bad thing. Bad thing. Going away. Another changed out cap there. Fairly cheap generic cap. The old don't have the right resistor in stock. Put 2 in series to get the resistance you need. That's functionally fine, but on an amp this intrinsically cool, that could be done better. The rest of it, at least at first glance, seems okay. Again, I'm not seeing any big discolored areas. Everything seems pretty clean. These Ampegs are notorious for bad solder joints, so I'll go back through all these things looking really closely and make sure there aren't any bad ones. Let's get these panels off the other side and take a look and see what the components there are looking like. Well, again, I've seen a lot worse than Ampegs. This is mostly just dirty. Again, these yellow box caps can be common sources of issues, and any of these resistors could have problems, but they're usually okay. But I'm not seeing anything in this amp other than a little bit of venting on one of the main multi-section filter can caps that tells me that this thing is going to blow up. So I think I'm going to very cautiously assemble it on my bench and see what it sounds like. It can only go boom, right? All right, let's power it on. And there's the expected and good, relatively small current draw, as I can see from the glow of the filament of my current limiter bulb. Wait just a bit for the output tubes to warm up. Let me confirm that I'm seeing some heater lights on those. Yeah. Take it out of standby. I'm not hearing anything. Let me go into the external input. Let's go into one of the channels. Nothing, not hearing anything. So let me measure some voltages on the tubes over there. Well, of immediate concern is this heater hum balance pot is physically defective and the whole thing moves and flexes. So that's not reliable. So I'm going to disconnect the two heater connections from that and tape those off and do a reference to ground with some resistors. But it's just throwing the heaters off quite a bit. I've got hum, but I don't have any signal, and I need to check the preamp heaters after this. But that's step one, is getting a nice, clean, reliable heater supply. All right, now that that's been sorted out, I've got a much more stable heater supply. There's still some hum in the output, but that could be mismatching on the output tubes, etc. We'll get to that. What does concern me is on this V1 here, which is the 12AX7 at the input to the entire output section. Got 457 volts on the plate. Nothing on the cathode. On this one, I've got 447. Nothing on the cathode. It's possible that both cathode sections have failures. It's a little more probable that JJ tube is bad. So I'm going to put the amp in standby. See if I can reach around and get this. It's always fun doing upside down. That tube's totally cool, and it's all splayed out. This tube may not be bad. It may just be a little too splayed to make contact. I'm going to put it to the side and put something else in just as a test though. So here's a groove tubes labeled JJ from a Fender. That's also in progress. All right, that tube is in place. It's a real tight fit in that socket, and the entire board flexed a lot, so I'm not too happy about that. I'll revisit. 440. Not getting any cathode voltage. Let's make sure that the heaters are there. Yeah. Shows that they're there. And I'm definitely getting signal, from that tube to the rest of the amp. All right, this cathode is now at 1.9. This cathode is still at 0. Well, on a hunch, I just wiggled this tube a lot, and the signal comes and goes as the tube is wiggled. I mean, that socket's very, very dirty. But there are positions where it makes sound. I think I need to clean that socket before going anywhere else. I was hoping I could check the channels, see if there's any other condition, any other problem, but gotta clear that up first. Remember earlier when I said all this was very dirty? Some of you thought I might have been being a little namby-pamby about things. No, dirt is a terrible conductor, and dirt traps other particles which can become conductive where you don't want conductivity. So you can stop it where you want it, you can introduce it where you don't. I've made sure that the amp is discharged before I add this liquid isopropyl alcohol. Just going to drip it all in there. Move it around on the board a little bit. The socket doesn't feel the best. Now I'm going to invert this with a paper towel it'll kind of wick out all the alcohol that I just put in there, and then we'll let it evaporate, and then we'll try this again. And I'll probably reflow the socket from the other side just in case we have a bad connection inside a solder joint. All right, I've cleaned both sides now with isopropyl. I've gotten a lot of yuck out of the pins themselves, and now I'm reflowing solder. I reflowed solder once, and there was a lot of sizzle as isopropyl that was in the pin of the socket was evaporating. And because that can introduce steam into the solder, after I let that cool off a bit, I'm just revisiting it. I don't want to hear any sizzle. Though the sizzle is good about driving out alcohol, I don't want steam. So I'm going to let this sit maybe 5 minutes and then heat those joints up again, make sure that I don't hear any sizzle. And then wait till all the isopropyl is evaporated. There's a little there. It's getting lots of yucky flux off. Yeah. Doesn't look like it's going to bring a big vintage amp to its knees, but this cumulatively can really mess things up. So we'll check back in a few. Well, as my Wi-Fi router is letting me know, we have signal now that the tube is actually making contact at all times, mostly. I think it needs to do another round of cleaning. See if we can make that better. That was going into the external amp input on the rear of the amp, and it's not as clean a connection as it should be. I've got to clean those jacks. I think I need to clean all the tube sockets and stuff. Yeah, it got some noise on the AU7s as well. But we have signal, and I imagine when I speak to the owner, his primary concern will have been that there was no signal until now. So let's see what the actual preamp channels are sounding like. Let's go into channel 1, and let me set the tone stack flat and the 3 switches to the flatter positions. If you hear the Wi-Fi chatter, a fix for that is in the works. I've just got to move a bunch of stuff in my workspace to make that happen, and I haven't had the time. So here's channel 1, hopefully. Let's see how the tone stack works. So the 3 pots work fine. The nasty ultra high works, how the mids do. Not hearing a big difference on the mids one. Now I am. I think those contacts just need to be cleaned. And the ultra low, let's try the thinner position first. Middle again. And ultra low. So that channel is actually sounding pretty nice. Good Lord, these things are loud. All right, so to the other channel. And the treble, working fine. And the bass working fine. Let's try the rocker for the bass. And the rocker for the treble. So all that is sounding quite nice. Might be way too loud for the lav mic. I'll find out when I do the playback. So looking around the amp right now, The owner just said, go through, tell me what it needs. As far as reliably making sounds, he's lucky. It looks like I just need to do a more thorough cleaning of that tube socket and the other two tube sockets in the section over there, the 12AU7s and the 12AX. A little bit more of what I've already done. That stuff is, just filthy in that area. So it may take 4 or 5 passes, but it's just alcohol and a little bit of time, so nothing major there. The power switch, however, right here, you saw with all that silicone and goop on the other side, someone put in a 3-way, but it only has, it needs a 2-way, and that light is really dim. That's optional. Changing the switch, I would want to have a single 2-position switch that works quite well, as opposed to this polarity. Well, that's not even a 3-way polarity switch on there. I would take out the polarity switch, just have the whole thing grounded, and have a 2-position switch here, and maybe a brighter LED or lamp, but that's up to him. And then the other optional thing, and at this point it really is still optional, this amp will need to be recapped at some point, probably in the next 10 years. The caps that are in there are pretty cheap ones and generic things, not installed particularly well, and I'm beginning to see a little bit of venting on these too. But I'm not hearing or measuring any problems. There's no big ripple or anything. It does not have to happen now. So I'll talk to the owner, make that an option, not trying to upsell it, just letting him know that, hey, I can make it playable and more reliable, or we can go ahead and do the generational service. You won't have to think about it again for a long time. It does need a new power cable as well. So power cable, cleaning, and reflowing solder on these tube sockets here, and I would recommend a new power switch. That's level 1 of service. Level 2 is a recap and making the amp sound phenomenal across the board. But as far as old SVTs go, this is really minor stuff. Everything seems healthy. I'm not hearing any sounds or behavior that make me think that any of the old yellow film caps are bad. And of course that bias adjustment pot, not bias adjustment pot, the heater adjustment pot back there, that'll be left in for cosmetics, but I'll just put some 100 ohm resistors to ground from one of the octal tube sockets, and that will be good enough. So I'll put all this together, put it on YouTube, and share the link with the owner. Videos like this are primarily for the owner to see what I find as I find it, so that there's a lot of clarity and transparency, and they know I'm not trying to sell them a new transmission and they only need an oil change. In this case, this is the oil change stuff. This is the transmission stuff that we'll eventually need, and the power switch is just some new fuzzy dice for the dash.